Welcome to the City of Ottawa podcast series, OttaTalk, where we talk with staff about city programs, projects, and initiatives. Today, we OttaTalk about bylaw and regulatory services. So stick around, Ottawa. We've got your ticket to a very interesting conversation.
Our theme music to start the show is titled Ma Prière by Josephine Leon. We start and end every podcast with a local artist featured on the City Sounds playlist on SoundCloud. You can find a link to our playlist in our show notes, and you'll hear more from Josephine Leon at the end of our podcast. One more reason to stay until the end. My name is Tom Peckloff. I'm the Public Outreach and Communications Coordinator for Parks, Maintenance, Forestry Services, supporting that service area on new tree planting initiatives and various park maintenance operations like controlling wild parsnip.
And my name is Valerie Bietlow. I work in the Public Policy Development area within the city's Emergency and Protective Services Department. We're keen to talk to you today about bylaw and regulatory services. We'll try to answer questions like, why did I get a ticket for this? What do bylaw enforcement officers do during a day? And how is any of this protecting me or my loved ones or the residents of Ottawa? To answer some of these questions, we'll be joined by Jonathan Walden, a public information officer for bylaw and regulatory services.
Now, before we get started, we have a few housekeeping notes. Any city programs or services we talk about today will be in the program notes wherever you're streaming this podcast, or you can search for them on the city website, ottawa.ca. The program notes also have a link to the city's YouTube channel where you will find our entire podcast archive. If you have a comment or question about any of our podcasts, send us a message at podcast-balado@ottawa.ca. Now, I don't know about you, Valerie, but I've had some nice conversations with bylaw in the past. Let's just say being a musician in rock bands over the years has taught me the value of soundproofing your basement.
Indeed, Tom. Let's start with a bit of background. Bylaw and Regulatory Services is responsible for enforcement and administration of more than 50 municipal bylaws, as well as provincial laws, within the City of Ottawa. Staff operate 144 hours per week and provide near 24-hour service citywide. Today, Jonathan Walden is with us. He joined Bylaw and Regulatory Services as a summer student while earning his BA in law at Carleton University. He's since worked as a parking control officer, a bylaw enforcement officer, a property standards and zoning officer, and a supervisor. And now he is the public information officer for the service. Welcome to OttaTalk, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start off with an impression that I have. It seems to me that working in bylaw seems like it could be a thankless job. So tell me, what do you like about the work you do in the service?
It can be thankless at times. I'm working a lot with the public, so that has its own rewards. We do also get, maybe not seen as much, but we do get a lot of compliments as well from people that we help. And that's usually sort of more of a one-on-one interaction. So I really enjoy that aspect of the job, getting to work with people. You get to kind of see the results of your work firsthand. It's a very fast-paced position. You're also kind of never having, the same experience every day is something different. So in that regards, it is a very rewarding and interesting career.
Very nice.
Now, obviously, some folks may not always be happy to see you around. Bylaw enforcement officers may have a bad rap at times. Does it make it difficult for you to do your job?
It can. We're humans, so things don't always kind of brush off our shoulders as easily as we'd like. But again, at the end of the day, we are getting a lot of compliments. We are helping a lot of people. I think in general, people don't always like being told what they can and can't do. So when you're the face of that, they kind of, take it out on you, or you're the representation of that. So that's who they're going to interact with and tell you kind of exactly how they feel. So it can make for a difficult days sometimes, but I think you learn pretty early on in your career whether or not this is something that you're suited for and whether or not you can move past those.
Fair.
When people think about bylaw enforcement, I think they often think about tickets. But actually, it's a lot more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, most people think parking tickets when they think bylaw. We do parking tickets, but we also have many different divisions with the branch that kind of help people in many different ways. So obviously we do have parking. We also have bylaw enforcement that deal with things like noise complaints, animals, things of that nature. We also have bylaw officers who deal with licensing things. So we have taxis, short-term rentals, driving schools, so they oversee that. I was also property standards and zoning officer, so we're doing property related complaints. Sometimes there are issues with tenants and landlords or garbage and long grass. So we do quite a few things other than parking tickets, but unfortunately, tickets are part of the job as well.
Let's touch on some of the things you mentioned. You responded to more than 98,000 service requests in 2024. Can you walk us through how a typical request might be handled? Maybe use property standards as an example.
Sure. So we have a priority-based call system. So when someone places a call, we would assign it a priority of 1, 2, or 3, 1 being the most important. Those are usually sort of issues that could have someone's safety involved. Something along the lines is your apartment doesn't have heat and you're unable to get a hold of your landlord. And priority 3s would be something, long grass or something that can wait a bit. So once an officer would receive that call, they would attend, they would do an inspection, they would contact the caller. Oftentimes, we're notifying the property owner of the issue, and we're really working with the property owner in cases of property standards calls to make sure that they're compliant with the bylaw. So it's not as black and white as you're committing a violation, here's a ticket. We are working a lot to try to solve the problem rather than just fine people.
When someone's made a call to the city and they're waiting for a bylaw officer to respond to that call, sometimes they're waiting for a bit. And it's not because the city doesn't consider their call to be important, right? It's literally because you have to prioritize calls. So as you've said, maybe a call about lack of heat in an apartment will take higher priority than, say, a property maintenance issue. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, again, sort of calls that are related to people's sort of health and safety are going to take a priority over something that could be more of a nuisance, such as a long grass. Again, it's not to say that, the long grass call is going to get ignored or isn't important, just with sort of the amount of calls that officers get. And, we are a limited number of officers, right, responding to a growing city. So we do have to sort of triage calls and make sure that we're attending them in sort of priority order.
And it's your dispatch service at Bylaw and Regulatory Services that does that prioritization?
Yeah, that's correct. So when the call comes into an officer, it's already, we've already sort of had that triage aspect where they've deemed it to be a priority 1, 2, or 3 call.
It might surprise some people to know how much work you do with animals in the city, Jonathan. Can you tell us a bit about the services that you offer that relate to animals?
Yeah, so we do quite a bit of work with people's pets, so cats and dogs. The city has a registration for cats and dogs. We also deal with dog bites, sort of dogs off leash issues where people maybe aren't, following the bylaw in terms of the handling of their pet. We also deal with wildlife. So if there's an orphaned animal or a sick or injured wildlife, we'll attend for that. And also for livestock at large, we'll get sometimes the odd livestock that escapes its pen and wandering the street that create a sort of a hazard for everyone. So we'll respond to a large number of animal calls throughout the city.
That really is a wide variety of things. Any particularly memorable interactions with animals that you can share with us?
Yeah, well, it was a little while back, but there was a fire at a high-rise in Overbrook. I think it displaced about 250 people. And I was on shift at the time, and we worked well with our partners there at Ottawa Fire Services to help clear the building. For the most part, anything with animals falls under bylaws purview. So while they're working on getting people out of the building, we were assisting with making sure the animals were out of the building as well, and then making sure that the animals were properly housed, because a lot of people didn't have proper housing after that. And while we're scrambling to get people into shelters, the animals need a place to stay as well. So we'll work well with Ottawa Fire. We also work well with our partners at the Ottawa Humane Society and make sure that we're finding appropriate locations for the animals during times of crisis like that.
Now, here's something that I've honestly never thought of before. You issued 11,000 business licenses in 2024. That's a lot of new businesses.
Yeah, it's great to see, right? Great to see new businesses popping up in Ottawa. And, the City of Ottawa has a great program. We have business ambassadors who will, assist people in kind of navigating all the permits and inspections that they need. I think that could be a lot maybe for a new business owner who just wants to open a restaurant and they don't really necessarily know all the steps it takes. So we do have the business ambassador program. I would encourage any new business owner or any restaurant owner looking to open up to take a look into that, because they'll help you sort of navigate costs, the permits, inspections, give you sort of guideline on timelines and things like that. So it's a great program to help, promote businesses in Ottawa.
Yeah, like you were saying before too, it's sort of solving problems before they even potentially happen for these new businesses.
Yeah, for sure. Again, we want to make it easy for people.
Yeah, right on.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk a little more about parking tickets. So is there something that you would like residents to know about parking enforcement here in the city? Maybe a misconception that we could clear up right here and right now?
I don't think people realize, when they see the person giving a ticket, sort of necessarily how many complaints we do get for parking. I think it was something like 44% from our annual report is a complaint volume we have for parking tickets. So when you see someone giving a ticket, especially, recently we've been talking quite a bit about tickets in the suburbs. We're not targeting anybody. We're not targeting a neighborhood. We're there because we're getting complaints. Obviously, sort of areas like the downtown core, we're going to proactively go through, and there's a lot of signage, and people have to pay to park in certain areas. But we're not, going out to the suburbs and trying to ticket people parked in front of their house or visiting a loved one. We're there because we get complaints, and it's unfortunate that we get, quite a few complaints for this, and it results in us having to attend.
So 452,202, to be precise, parking infraction notices were handed out in 2024, but not all by you guys, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So that's across all agencies. So, obviously we're going to be the bulk of that, having parking control under bylaw. But there are, other services. OC Chancellor has special constables that can issue parking tickets. Ottawa Police will also issue parking tickets. And we also have a pretty strong relationship with private property enforcement agencies. So basically what will allow private property owners to deputize people to be able to issue tickets on their property. Bylaw will respond to private property calls. So if, someone's parked in your laneway or parked in your parking spot, yeah, for sure you can call 311 and we'll attend. But there's a lot of private lots, that have their own sort of pay and display or car registration systems, and they'll deputize agents to work on their property. So those tickets would be reflected in that number as well. So the purpose of that was to kind of allow people to have a way to contest those tickets, because before, there was some stuff where it would be an invoice or it was sort of unclear if you got a ticket and you didn't think you deserved it, how to contest it. But now with the deputization program, you're sort of afforded all the things that you would be getting in any other parking ticket. You can contest it in court and contest your side and show proof that you were legally parked.
Right. Okay.
And I think it's just important to point out too, for a lot of the parking tickets that we are giving, everyone likes to complain about a parking ticket. You don't often hear about the other side. You don't hear that, sometimes there's vehicles that are abandoned on street, especially in the winter, you see them, they get plowed around. Now your street's now really used to one lane, causes a lot of issues. We get, cars that just never move, and then there's no sort of turnover in traffic, and people can't find parking on their street. So I think it is important to kind of see both sides of it. Also to kind of acknowledge that, there are people who, complain about that, and that will generate officers to attend.
Now, obviously ignorance is not an excuse, but I think there are probably a lot of elements to parking rules that, people don't know. Like you can't sign every single intersection saying you can't be used. So, I don't even know, 3 meters, is it?
It depends. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
The sort of the general rule is 9 meters so there's a lot of unsigned bylaws, right? Like everyone knows the obvious ones: don't park in front of a fire hydrant. Obviously don't, park in front of someone's laneway, but the bylaws actually, you can't park within 1.5 meters of someone's laneway. And obviously the one that seems to confuse the most people is there, even if there's not a sign on the street saying, 1 or 2 hour parking, it's 3 hour parking between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday to Friday, and 6 hours on the weekend. So just something to be aware of. Again, not something that we're going to necessarily go out and proactively enforce in small areas, but something that is in the bylaw and that we do enforce.
And all the unsigned regulations are all in the bylaw and found online on Ottawa.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're not trying to hide anything. Yeah, all the bylaws are online on Ottawa.ca, and specifically with the parking one, it's the traffic and parking bylaw.
So at the time of this recording, the city has just begun allowing the consumption of alcohol in certain areas of some of its parks. Now, of course, I always thought it was any park I was in moderation, of course. Is there anything that we can tell people about how it's been going so far?
Yeah, so this, at the time of this recording, it just started on July 1st. I would encourage people to check out Ottawa.ca. I think there's going to be a lot of new information coming out over the next couple of weeks about this. But I believe right now it's in 7 designated parks. So I guess the important takeaways would be, if you are going to consume an alcoholic beverage, make sure you're doing it in the designated park, not just kind of designating the park yourself. Also, making sure that, there are some rules still around the drinking in the designated parks. You have to be 5 meters away from things like playgrounds, play fields, wading pools. And obviously, making sure you're consuming it rationally.
Bylaw and Regulatory Services recently brought their 2024 annual report forward to Committee and Council. So congratulations on that. Jonathan, give us one highlight of that report that you'd like everyone to know about.
Yeah, I think something we were really proud about was our accessible taxi program. So it started, I believe, last year. We did almost 14,500 rides. It's a 21% increase from the previous year. And we've just really been able to lower, wait times, because I think a lot of people were having trouble getting a hold of a taxi that was accessible, especially if you have some mobility issues and you need that extra seating. Some of the wait times were sort of 30 minutes plus, and we've gotten that down to about 9 to 15 minutes. So it's a big improvement. I think it really helps, people get to, appointments or go visit loved ones. So it's something that we're really proud of, and we've actually been able to grow the fleet to 91 vehicles of accessible cabs.
Amazing. Now, if I need to make a service request, what is the most efficient way for me to do that?
So we always tell people call 311. You can submit online too. There are, for several types of complaints, we do have online complaint services. 311 is just the easiest way for us to kind of get accurate information, I think, from callers, make sure that they're able to maybe sort of set expectations in terms of response times from an officer. And also, depending on the type of the call, not everything is a 311. Maybe it is a 911 call. And I think the agents there at 311 can better direct the residents as to the nature of their call.
Jonathan, you've got the last word today on Bylaw and Regulatory Services. So maybe give us one final gem that you'd like to share with us about your service.
I think just acknowledging that our officers are doing a very difficult job. It's not necessarily the flashiest job, when you're responding to a noise complaint, telling someone to turn down the music, or, going to somebody whose dog's off leash and telling them that, in this park, unfortunately, the dogs need to be secured on a leash. It doesn't always go over well. It's not always, brought in a good light, let's say. So I think just acknowledging that, these officers do have a tough job. They're doing the best that they can. I think they're doing a great job. And, I think even if we can just encourage the public just to, maybe say thank you when you see an officer, you wave, head nod, something to sort of just say thank you for what you do. I think it goes a long way with the officers in their day-to-day.
Well, thank you for being here today, Jonathan.
No problem. Thank you.
This is the end of the podcast, but not the end of the conversation. Remember to visit ottawa.ca for more information about the programs you heard about here, and be on the lookout for upcoming announcements about more City of Ottawa podcasts. That's when we will OttaTalk about something completely different. To play us out, here's a little more of Ma Prière by Josephine Leon.